Hello everyone, I'm Brian, and welcome back to part 2. So I thought about that question he said yesterday. Well, yesterday for me anyway. So about how either Elon Musk will go to Mars or he won't go to Mars. So it seems very definitive, and I've thought about that. And what I explained on the video yesterday was also pretty on point. So if you look at one action alone, it only ever has two outcomes. So, for example, 1 p.m. tomorrow, am I going to eat or am I not going to eat? So it's definitive whether I eat or don't eat. One of those two is going to happen. But at the same time, am I going to walk or am I going to not to walk at 1 p.m. tomorrow? Or am I going to sleep or not sleep 1 p.m. tomorrow? Or am I going to drive or not drive 1 p.m. tomorrow? Or am I going to blink or not blink 1 p.m. tomorrow? Am I going to point or not point at 1 p.m. tomorrow? So when you hyper specify something, it becomes very definitive. But the potential at that point is near infinite. So it's not necessarily deterministic. So again, tomorrow at 1 p.m. I could eat, I could run, I could walk, I could blink, I can point, I could sleep, I can drive, I can crawl, I can roll, I can fold, I can wash, I can, the potentiality is infinite, but the outcome is only two, whether I do it or I don't. And I like to look at life as not true or false, even though that's kinda true, but it's so limited, but more of a fill in the blank. So tomorrow at 1 p.m. I'm going to, well, we'll have to wait until 1 p.m. and then I'll fill it out of what exactly I do. I hope that makes sense. I want to let me know. But let's see what free will, for free will.
One argument for free will, the arguments in favor of free will, this idea that we actually have free will, this is called libertarianism. The opposite view is called determinism. So libertarianism is we have free will. First argument, it comes from introspection, self-observation. You see, our own introspection, when you look inside, the argument is very simple. Your direct observation of the mind, whether it is pain or pleasure, it is the most reliable way of reporting. If I feel pain, if I feel pleasure, then I'm right, because whatever is happening outside, my feeling is the correct report of what I am experiencing. So if I feel free will, then there must be free will. It seems like a simple argument, but it's actually pretty powerful. We experience freedom in creativity. I may think this way, I may think that way, I may think in another way. When a poet writes a poem, when an author writes a book, you're writing a story, you feel a freedom. You may not feel that freedom in actually physical body. A lot of activities in the body are done unconsciously by the nervous system, by the body itself. A digestion of food, assimilation of the food, the heart, pumping of blood, all of that is unconscious. But when you are doing a conscious act of creativity, say you write a story, don't you feel that you have the freedom of deciding how the story will go? You feel a creative freedom. The creative freedom felt by artists.
That's the problem, though. The deterministic has such a strong argument in my mind, because where are those ideas coming from? From past experience. So it's already kind of deterministic, because you think, oh, I need something very actiony. What did I do or experience in the past that was very actiony that I like? Let me put that down. Because you're already determining what you want to put down, and you want to put the best down, so that's already deterministic. You're not going to put the crappiest one down, and even then it could be seen deterministic because you want to put a crappy one down. I mean, that's why whenever I first watch free will versus deterministic stuff, I've only watched a very few videos of it. It was very compelling.
That is according to this argument, is a sure proof that we have free will. If you feel pain, and then you say that I have pain and I feel pain, and that's a trustworthy report of actual pain, then if you say I feel free will, why is it not a trustworthy report of actual free will? Our mental states, we are the best person to report what is there in the mind. You might see that it's not quite a watertight argument.
Yeah. It's not quite a strong argument at all. Because then, like, say you do something. I was hoping he would explain a little bit more, but he's saying he was doing something and you feel good about it. Like, yeah, that's great. Then all of a sudden, what happens if you do it again in front of people and people say, no, don't do that. You're like, why? What's wrong? Now your good feelings change to worrisome, to potentially bad. You know, so there is outside influence, and also I don't know, I guess that's still kind of technically free will too, because you change your mind as opposed to what it was.
Something like phantom pain, for example. You have heard of that? Phantom limb? Somebody has
phantom limb, yes.
Amputated limb. So this hand is not there. And this person says, I have tremendous pain in my left hand. It's been cut off. It's been amputated. But it comes and he actually feels that pain. But the limb is not there. So it's a pain in a phantom limb. V.R. Ramachandran has done a lot of work on this. A very interesting book is there about it.
And real quick, there's actually a YouTube video where you can simulate phantom pain and stuff like that. It's like, I think that you put your hand down and they cover your hand. They have another fake hand that's also covered, but you know it's fake. What they do is one guy touches the fake hand, but another person touches your real hand, and then they let go, and then the other person lets go. So basically, as one person touches the fake hand, the other person touches your real hand, and they mimic all the actions. I think that, like, I'm facing you and you have your hands towards me, the fake hand here, your real hand here. So as I touch and rub, let go, touch and rub, and let go, touch and rub, I've mimicked the motions on the fake hand and your real hand. And then eventually, I think they do it for like 5 minutes, and then all of a sudden, so you don't see your real hand doing this. You don't see my hand to your real hand. You just see the fake hand and my hand doing the motion. Eventually, even though this is right here, if I do that and I do that, you will feel it, and I let go. And if I touch, even though this hand, I'm not touching your real hand, only the fake hand, you will feel it. Now, I don't know how many people will fall for this, but they seem to be seems to work often enough to have some kind of evidence for it, which is very fascinating. I would love to try that, but I have no one to do that with.
A variation of this argument is the introspection, the argument from contrast. It goes like this, subtle but very powerful argument. We all understand the difference between being compelled, being forced, and doing something freely. If you compel me to raise my hand, you hold my hand and raise it. I know the difference between that and raising myself. Because we know this contrast, then there must be something called free will. If everything was compelled, there's no such thing as free will, how do we know the contrast between being compelled and being free?
That is a bit of a better argument, but still, the deterministic one still has a better argument because of your past history. You can literally, I think for the most part, I've not thought about it too deeply, but I think you can trace back a lot of your actions to what you've from earlier experiences in your life.
You see the argument? We all feel when somebody pressurizes you, somebody forces you, somebody compels you, and when you are left to yourself, you feel the difference. Then there must be some difference in taking a free decision and being forced. So this contrast proves that we have free will.
Now, okay, I thought about that. So, sorry I'm pausing so much, but this is very fascinating. So, I think here, though, while there is a difference, but it's not to say, it's how do I say, like, trying to think of something to compare it to. I can't really think of anything. But anyway, both are still deterministic. It's just they feel different. It's like cold water and hot water. It's like cold water, oh yeah, that's cold. Hot water, it's like, oh, that's really hot. They're both different. It's like, no, but they're still both water. You know, one's cold, one's hot, but it's still both water. You know, one feels like it's free will, and the other one feels like it's forced, but they're both deterministic. So I don't know. Again, it's just a thought that just came up, so I haven't really thought about that. But that's still a better than the first one.
Again, you can argue against this also. Anyway. Then the third one is very interesting. It's an argument, or the second argument, this is the first argument, introspection, look inside. The second argument is powerful argument. Argument from ethical appraisal. When we praise, look at the, see, Mahatma Gandhi was non-violent. Adolf Hitler was violent. Adolf Hitler we condemn. Mahatma Gandhi we praise. Now suppose you say, no, it's all because of it's predetermined. Adolf Hitler could not help being violent, Mahatma Gandhi could not help being non-violent, then there's nothing to praise. If it automatically comes, it is a result of determination, then why are you praising ethical actions and condemning unethical actions?
Because the actions themselves are still ethical and unethical. Just because they're deterministic doesn't change the fact that it's ethical or unethical, maybe. I get what he's saying there. Not a bad point. But even so, I think we can, even if things are deterministic, I think the actions themselves still can be ethical and unethical.
So this ethical appraisal, which is a common thing throughout human society, even little children will condemn bad behavior in other children and will be happy with good behavior in their friends.
Again, this is part of deterministic. So, you know, you when you're growing up, you're doing things, and then people saying, "Oh, you're doing bad things," and all of a sudden now you're programmed in your mind. It's like, "Oh, I can't do that because of my past experience." So now in the future, if you that urge comes up, you're like, oh no, I can't do it because of what my friend said when I was younger. And also, Sadhguru doesn't believe in anyone's ethics from the last video.
That means they are appraising ethically. So this moral appraisal, ethical appraisal, if it is not a decision taken freely, what is there to praise? What is there to condemn? In the legal system, the whole thing in law, that punishment should be given to wrongdoer, it depends on the existence of free will. Unless somebody takes a free decision to do something wrong, you cannot punish such a person. If it is compelled, that's why one of the arguments
Sorry, I'm going to rewind that real quick.
Law, in the legal system, what is ethical appraisal? If it is not a decision taken freely, what is there to praise? What is there to condemn? In the legal system, the whole thing in law, that punishment should be given to wrongdoer, it depends on the existence of free will. Unless somebody takes a free decision to do something wrong, you cannot punish such a person. If it is compelled, that's why one of the arguments you see in court is, I didn't do it. There's a cartoon to the judge, the person standing there and telling the judge, I didn't do it, my genes made me do it. It sounds ridiculous, but variations of this argument have been used by lawyers. A plea from insanity. So if there's a plea from insanity, the sentence can be reduced, or the person may not be given a sentence, may be sent to a treatment facility. A plea from insanity. So a plea that because I was maltreated when I was a child by my caregivers, so I have got all these bad tendencies.
That is true, though. That is true. At least, for the most part, it's true. There is, obviously, if there's a lot of trauma in a child in their childhood, they do tend to grow up problematic. They don't tend to work well with others. They tend to do bad behavioral things. So that is still true. That doesn't excuse you from the things that you do, even though your actions are deterministic. So, I mean, that is a good point, but nonetheless, though, I think.
So now I am blaming So that something happened in my past which is forcing me. It's not out of my free will that I'm doing it. Now I cannot be punished for it. So that means there is a component of free will. Otherwise, law, morality, all the entire legal system, even other than the legal system, the moral justification. You praise somebody, he has done good actions. This person sacrificed himself for others. This person exploited and cheated others. Condemn this person, praise that person. If you condemn somebody and praise somebody, you are affirming that there is free will. This person freely did good things. This person freely did bad things.
No, because if you've grown up in a good life and been taught good things, you will do good things. So is it because you have free will that you did good things, or is it because you were taught to do good things? And again, this are general speaking. There are people who grow up in bad neighborhoods or bad households that end up being bad. It's not all people, but it tends to be, I don't know what the percentage is, but it's pretty high. It's like, generally speaking, if you grow up in a bad neighborhood, well, not necessarily bad neighborhood, but bad household, you do tend to turn out bad. Pretty disproportionately high. You have like a 70% chance of end up becoming a criminal in a sense, and it sucks. And then if you have a good upbringing, you have a really high chance of doing well. Very high chance. There's statistics for that. I don't exactly remember the numbers. They're pretty high, like ridiculous high. So, but in a deterministic point of view, if you raised up good and have taught to be good and then do good, is that really you being good, doing good out of free will, or is it because of how you've been raised that you do that anyway? Now, the part is where a person who has grown up in bad neighborhoods, bad parenting, and then does good. That is a change. So this is the reason why I want to believe in free will, and this is how, I guess, one way to prove free will is deterministic. You can look at statistics where, again, it's about 70% of children who grow up in ruined households turn criminal. And if a child that grew up in that kind of environment turns to do good, that's a very strong argument for free will, because otherwise deterministic would say that they end up becoming a criminal, because the statistics show it's pretty high, but not 100%. And also same thing with a person who was raised in a good family, in a good neighborhood. I think they still do good. I think pretty high, maybe around 78% as well too. They do very well, but not all of them always do good. Some of them turn to crime as well, even though they've been raised good. So that's, I guess, a good way to prove free will.
Hence, it should be condemned, that person should be praised. So this is a simple argument, but powerful argument from free will, from ethical appraisal. The third argument in favor of free will, and that's the last one, is again a very interesting argument, very simple. It says that those who argue against free will, are they not saying, here are the arguments, listen to the arguments, and then you must accept that there is no free will. The must accept. I'm going to give you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 arguments. Listen to them. Then you should be convinced that there is no free will. Must be convinced, should be convinced. Must be, should be, depends on my free will. Right? Without free will, if I have free will, I can say, I am convinced by your argument. I am not convinced by your argument. I am confused by your argument. I can freely say this in response to your arguments. That's why you have to plead. When a lawyer pleads to the judge and the jury, here I have presented my evidence, then you must decide in my favor, in the favor of my client. Then you must decide, you should decide. That means I'm appealing to your free will. So even the arguments which you are providing against free will I want you to be convinced by those arguments. That means I accept implicitly that you have the freedom to be convinced or not to be convinced. So this is one kind of argument for that. He calls it argument from pragmatic self-refutation. The arguments of those who are against free will, they automatically refute themselves because you are giving arguments to prove it. The another position is, no, free will and determinism can be combined. It's not that they are contradictory. You say, how? Free will and no free will, they're not contradictory. How? Two examples are given. One is a person who gets the same example of raising the hand. Suppose a person gets Alzheimer's, or the person gets Parkinson's, or the person gets a stroke and the right side is paralyzed. Okay? And now the person is willing, I want to raise my hand, but unable to raise the hand. In contrast to this, I can raise the hand. How am I raising the hand? The brains are sending signals through the nerves, and the nerves are contracting and relaxing the muscles, and the hand is raised. This whole chain of events is deterministic, is perfectly mechanical. One thing leading to another, right? So deterministic chain of events enables me to raise my hand freely. If this determinism fails, then the person wills that I will raise my hand, unable to raise his hand. In the case of a person who has got a stroke or paralyzed. So without determinism, one cannot exercise one's free will. And to exercise one's free will, one needs a deterministic causal chain of events. Who is more free? I can raise my hand, or the patient who's lying in the bed unable to raise the hand? Who is more free? Who do you think is more free? The person who can raise the hand is more free, but the person is using a completely deterministic chain of events to exercise his or her freedom. So determinism and freedom of the will are not contradictory. To exercise your freedom of the will, you need these causal chains, these deterministic sequences. Another example is a mathematician. A mathematician generates theorems. There's a monk, a friend of mine, who is a famous mathematician, and he defined a mathematician as, a mathematician is a machine who converts coffee into theorems. Drinks a lot of coffee and generates theorems. So another funny joke, but might be slightly offensive. There's this this is meeting going on in the university, and all the different departments are, asking for grants from the vice chancellor or the president of the university. And somebody, this physics department asked for a grant, and then the mathematics department said, look, sir, if you give them grants, their machines are so expensive. So much money goes into those experimental, that applied physics, experimental machines, very expensive. You give grants to our department because there's hardly any wastage. We just need a coffee and a pen and paper and drink coffee and write this mathematical theorems. If they are right, we keep them. If they are wrong, we just crumple that paper up and throw it in the waste paper basket. All we need is coffee machine, pen and paper, and one waste paper basket. Then the literature department said, we don't even need the waste paper basket. Whatever we write is gold. So our department is the best one. No wastage. A mathematician is able to generate theorems, come to conclusions, because he or she plays the game of mathematics according to the rules of mathematics. So everything is bound by the axioms, by the rules of mathematics. Then only one can do mathematics. Now, is that lack of free will, or is that freedom? That is freedom. If you play by the rules of mathematics, then only you can do genuine mathematics. So those axioms of mathematics, the basic foundations of mathematics, allow you to do mathematics. So causality or certain rules, certain bounds enabled you to exercise freedom. If there was no rule of mathematics, there would be no mathematics also. So total chaos is not freedom.
That's kind of weird to say in mathematics, because, like, what I'm trying to think of, like, you don't want to. God, I can't remember certain the math formulas, but thing I'm just remembering right now. You don't want to put in a cosine formula for a tangent or a sine formula. You want to make sure that something that you need a tangent formula for, you want to use a tangent formula. You can't freely choose a cosine or sine formula for that. Or if you need to figure out a circle, you want to make sure you use pi, and you don't want to use any other things. Like, oh no, I can freely choose what I want in math. I'll just use 3 or 6. It's all it's freely choosing. Math is pretty strict. It's not really free, I don't think. I mean, I could be wrong on that, but as far as I know, that if there's anything to be solved, there's strict formulas to use for solving the problem. You can't just freely use any formula. There are strict formulas to use for specific problems. But in literature, on the other hand, you can write whatever you want. Now, like art stuff is very freeing, because literally anything can be considered art. A scratch on a piece of paper or a blank canvas is art. As a matter of fact, I think I remember reading somewhere where someone left a piece of banana hanging somewhere and people thought it was art, even though it was literally just someone left a banana there. So that, I would say, is more freeing, more free will. Math, science are very deterministic, because there's popular formulas that have to be used. You cannot use any formula to solve problems. You have to use specific formulas to solve specific problems.
Chaos can in fact impede or obstruct your freedom. So compatibilism says that free will and no free will they can be combined.
That's
this
what
is
I
the
want to believe.
third position. What did Sri Ramakrishna say about it? Now we come to the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. Very interesting. Sri Ramakrishna says, somebody asks him about free will. It is God alone who does everything. Sri Ramakrishna is very, very clear here. You may say that in that case man may commit sin. He knows the immediate next question. But that is not true. If a man is firmly convinced that God alone is the doer and he himself is nothing, then he will never make a false step. It is God alone who has planted in man's mind what the Englishmen call free will. But note, very interesting, that this comment he makes, what the Englishmen call free will, because he is aware of the context. That the way this thing is put, it comes from, maybe he's not aware that it comes from Christian theology, but it's not exactly in the Indian philosophical context. In the Indian philosophical context, question of freedom is there. Question of agentship is there. But in this way, free will or no free will, that question is generally not debated. People who have not realized God would become engaged in more and more sinful actions if God had not planted in them the notion of free will. This is also another interesting comment, that we feel free will. Suppose there is no free will, but we all feel it. And Sri Ramakrishna says, God has planted this notion in us, that he makes us feel that we have got free will. Those who have realized God are aware that free will is a false appearance. In reality, I am the machine and God is the operator. Tini jontri, ami jontro. In Bengali, he says. I am the carriage and God is the driver. Ami rotho, tumi rothi. I am the chariot, you are the charioteer. So Sri Ramakrishna accepts that God is ultimately the doer of all, is the ultimate agent.
So no
There's an
free
interesting
will?
discussion in the Gospel between Dr. Mahendralal Sharkar, who was in favor of free will, and Sri Ramakrishna. The doctor says, I do not say that the will is absolutely free. Very interesting, very intelligent position. I do not say that the will is absolutely free. Suppose a cow is tied with a rope. She is free within the length of that rope. The farmer ties the cow to a tree. Now the cow may wander around in the circumference of that circle described by the rope, by the radius of that rope, and eat grass or may sit quietly. That much freedom the cow has. She's free within the length of that rope, but when she feels the pull of the rope, so then Sri Ramakrishna says, Jadu Mallik also gave that illustration. Another devotee was a very rich householder who lived nearby, Dakshineshwar. Sri Ramakrishna says, yes, I have heard this example of the cow tied to the tree. Jadu Mallik also gave that example. And then he says, is it mentioned in some English book? Look here, if a man truly believes that God alone does everything, that he is the operator and man is the machine, then such a man is Jivan Mukta. He defines Jivan Mukta, an enlightened person, free while living, is a person who realizes God does everything. Thou dost thine own work, men only call it theirs. Tomar karma tumi karo ma, loke bale koriyami. It's a song to the Divine Mother. Oh Mother, see, when you translate into English, it becomes God, but often Sri Ramakrishna would mean she, mother.
Before it continues on with that, I just want to say that the cow analogy was actually quite fantastic. Very interesting, the fact that the cow has free reign to do whatever it wants within the limitation of the rope. Outside of that, it does not have free will. That is, I never thought about it that way. That is really good. I like that. But is it really free will, though? I mean, technically, if you can do anything within the bounds of the rope, it is. Kinda. But you don't have complete free will because you cannot go beyond the boundaries of the rope. But is he saying here that you do not have free will because everything's done by God? Is this contradictory to what Swami Tadat Madanda has said, which is the Turiya Brahman has no free will, but the body does. The mind, the thoughts, the actions, the emotions have free will.
So, Mother, you do thy work, but people say, I am doing it. Another place, Sri Ramakrishna says, I say, oh Mother, I am the machine and you are the operator, same thing. I am inert and you make me conscious. I do as you make me do. I speak as you make me speak. Then he adds, this is the interesting thing, but the ignorant say, I am partly responsible and God is partly responsible. In Bengali, the exact words are, Kotok ami korchi, kotok tini korchen. Who says this? We think that's a good position to take. He says, Ajnani wale. The ignorant say this. Again, he says, a man becomes a Jivan Mukta when he knows that God is the doer of all things. Where is man's free will? All are under the will of God. Another interesting portion when Girish Ghosh is debating with Dr. Mahendranath Sarkar. Girish Ghosh, he feels that everything is done by God. And Dr. Sarkar feels that no, we have certain amount of free will. The debate is going on and Sri Ramakrishna intervenes. So this is very interesting, again from the Gospel. Girish Ghosh was he's debating about free will with Dr. Sarkar. In response to Sri Ramakrishna's assertion that everything is determined by God's will, Dr. Sarkar claims, but God has given us free will. I can think of God or not as I like. Taking Sri Ramakrishna's side, Girish Ghosh says to Dr. Sarkar, you think of God or you do some good deed because you like to. Really, it is not you who do these things, but your liking of them that makes you do so. This is that psychological determinism. You see, we think, I am going to raise my hand, I think that. I have decided. But the decision came as a series of thoughts. And where did the thoughts come from? If I introspect, the thoughts have bubbled up from some unconscious depth. Did I generate those thoughts? No. So he says, your liking makes you do it. You don't do it. Sri Ramakrishna says, he intervenes in the debate. Sri Ramakrishna says, in order to do anything, one must have a belief about something and feel joy at the thought of what he believes. Only then does he set about performing the work. Suppose a jar of gold coins is hidden underground. First of all, a man must have the knowledge or belief that there is a jar of gold coins. He also feels joy at the thought of that jar of gold coins. Then he begins to dig. As he removes the earth, he hears a metallic sound that increases his joy. Next, he sees the corner of the jar that gives him more joy. Thus, his joy is ever on the increase. Now, all this comes from the desire. Where did the desire come from? Where did the knowledge or belief come from? Now, the argument could be a person who feels that God does everything can engage in sinful actions and justify it by saying that God is making me sin.
Okay, I don't know if it's going to go in deeper with the coins, but so I can hopefully explain that part, and I wish you would answer it. But so the jar of gold coins. Well, why would he feel joy or happiness for seeing that? Well, let's find out what is gold coins. Well, it has value in our world. So imagine if gold coins is complete crap, like utter garbage, and he looks and finds the gold coins and like, it's gold coins. He's not going to be happy. So what's in the jar and how we value what's in the jar determines whether it's joy or not, because gold coins is worth a lot, but if it's worth nothing, then it's not going to be happy. I actually had a thought about the happiness, about this happiness. If you know something and when you do it makes you happy, then you would do it. But I do wonder about this question. So I was this is actually a real life situation that happened to me. I was thinking about going to pick me up some Dunkin' coffee, and I was like, oh man, it's $5. It's pretty expensive, and I have to go out that way anyway. And drinking that coffee is fantastic, but it's $5. I love that coffee though, but it's $5. That's like, I can't get it. I need to save money. So I'm saddened that I didn't get it, but I chose not to do it. I chose not to make myself happy by going to get that coffee. Instead, I chose what made me sad, because I didn't get that coffee. I wonder, I don't know if he's going to explain a little bit further of why we would choose something that doesn't make us happy. Would that make it free will? Or would that make it free will? Perhaps it's going to say the reason why you chose not to get the coffee is ultimately happiness. I don't know, let me know.
Actually, in the Mahabharata, you find Duryodhana. Sri Ramakrishna actually refers to that later on. In fact, there is a place where Sri Ramakrishna refers to. There's a that's coming. I'll go to that portion. A Brahmo devotee from the Brahmo Samaj has come, and they are having a debate. So another debate about free will in the gospel itself. The Brahmo says this very thing: if it is God who makes me do everything, then I'm not responsible for my sins. This is a question which comes up. Sri Ramakrishna says, yes, Duryodhana also said that. O Krishna, I do what thou seated in my heart makest me do. The story is, often some people say that, why did Krishna teach the Gita to Arjuna? If had Krishna taught the Gita to the villain, Duryodhana, it would have prevented the terrible war. Why not tell good things to the bad guys? Why tell good things to good guys? The thing is, if you look at the story, Krishna actually tried to teach Duryodhana. He goes to Duryodhana and says, look, what you are doing is evil. It's not good. Don't do it. This is good action, do this. This is evil action, don't do that. Dharma and adharma. And Duryodhana's answer was stunning. He says, I know what I'm doing is bad. I know what is good. I know what is bad. That's not my problem. You don't have to teach me what is right and wrong. Janami dharmam, nachame pravritti. I know what is good. That's not my problem. What's my problem? I know what's good. I don't feel like doing it. Janami adharmam, nachame nivritti. I know what is bad, what I'm doing. What are all the things that I've done, the bad things. I know that it's bad, but that's not my problem. My problem is I like doing it. I can't stop myself. Then why are you doing it? If you know it's bad, then why are you doing it? If you know it's good, why don't you do it? Kenapi devena hridisthitena yatha niyojito asmi tatha karomi. There is some power within me, some force within me, which forces me along this path, and I can't help it. I know that's good, but I don't feel like doing it. I know that's bad. I can't stop myself. And this is the heart of the human tragedy, actually. We know what is good. We know what is bad. But often we cannot do what is good. And often we cannot prevent ourselves from doing what is bad. And we consciously, that's where guilt comes from. Guilt comes from knowing something is bad and doing it. And then why did I do it? Remorse. So Sri Ramakrishna says, yes, Duryodhana also said that. Oh Krishna, I do what thou seated in my heart makest me do. God is making me do this. All the bad things. Then what is the response to that? Sri Ramakrishna says, if a man has the firm conviction, in Bengali, thik bishas, that God alone is the doer and he is his instrument, then he cannot do anything sinful. He who has learned to dance correctly never makes a false step. Then the crucial statement, one cannot even believe in the existence of God until one's heart becomes pure. Now, very interesting. It means if somebody uses this excuse, oh, so there is no free will, God is making us do everything. In that case, I am doing all these bad acts, God is making me do it. Why are you blaming me? That person is being deceitful. That person really does not believe deeply in the existence of God. Neither does that person feel that God is doing. That person actually feels, I am doing it. Now I've got a nice excuse.
Before it continues here, this is where I was like, well, this is where extremists comes in, where you have extremist people who genuinely believe this is what they have to do. They are, you can look at even at cult people, and one that I'm quite not familiar, but one I've heard of in the United States and decently familiar with is the people who believe Halley's Comet is like a spaceship or something. So it's a cult, and again, extremists, and at least they don't harm other people. They do it to themselves in a sense, but they find out when Halley's Comet is going to be coming right over them, and then they take bad stuff to lay down permanently, YouTube friendly. So, but they genuinely believed it. It's not like, who in their right mind who doesn't believe in that? There's actually two people who didn't quite go through with it, and they didn't go through with it. I think it was the last two that's supposed to do it, because they had to make sure the first group did it, then the second group did it, and I think they were supposed to be the last ones, but I think they had a change of heart, because I think they had to make sure that the first and second group did it, and also put like coverings over them. But I think they had a change of heart. So what sane person would do that, thinking that they're gonna ride Halley's Comet? I believe that's the what they believe is Halley's Comet is a spaceship or something like that. So there are people out there who will strap some things on and go to certain places, and then and they, like, again, no sane person would do that, but an extremist who genuinely believes will.
So genuinely, if a person feels the presence of God, genuinely if a person's mind and intellect or heart are on God, that person will not do anything bad. Sri Ramakrishna gives the example of Ramericha, it's all Rama's wish. You know the story of the weaver who was weaving, and one late night robbers came. They were running away after robbing a house, and the police chased those robbers, and the robbers kept all the stolen goods in front of the weaver and they ran away. And the police came and saw all the stolen goods in front of the weaver. They caught hold of the weaver and dragged him off to jail. Next morning he was produced before the judge, and the people of the village said, "Oh, he is a pious person, he couldn't have stolen." Meanwhile, the robbers were discaught or something like that, and the judge let that man go, and the weaver came and started weaving again. And then they asked him about it. What happened? He says, by Rama's wish, I was weaving. And by Rama's wish, there was a robbery. And by the wish of Rama, the robbers came this way. And by the wish of Rama, the police chased them. And by the wish of Rama, they dumped those goods in front of me. And by the wish of Rama, the police thought that I was the thief. And by the wish of Rama, they dragged me to jail, where by the wish of Rama, I spent the night. Next moment and morning, by the wish of Rama, the judge, out of his kindness, freed me. And by the wish of Rama, I'm back here again. Now, a genuinely devoted person would hold on to that no matter what is happening, good or bad. So, that is what Sri Ramakrishna says. Who has deep devotion to God will do that. Swami Vivekananda himself, he was asked about free will, and his answer was very interesting. He said, it's a contradiction in terms. Free will is a contradiction in terms. There is freedom and there is will. The will is a chain of mental events. See, the same argument. It is within causation. He put it very powerfully. From freedom we come, and in bondage it becomes will, and from bondage we go to freedom again. So it's not free will, it's freedom. It's not free will now, it is will within causation. That's what he calls bondage. And when we get enlightenment, freedom, then we attain our status as the ever free Atman. But then there is no question of will at that time. In the ultimate reality, in Brahman, Satchidananda, there is no question of will. Why would the Absolute, what would the Absolute will about? How would the Absolute will anything? Willing is in the mind. In our own deep sleep, when the mind is resolved, where is will? Where is will when you are in deep sleep? You exercise will, you feel the existence of will in waking state, maybe sometimes in the dream, but not in deep sleep. So beyond the mind is no question of will. Will is within the mind, and being within the mind, it is a chain of cause and effect. That was Vivekananda's position. Anyhow, summing up.
Okay, before he sums it up, okay, that makes sense. Now he reaffirms Tadamadanda's phrase there, because now it makes sense, I guess, where the absolute reality, there's no reason for will because it's literally everything. It doesn't have to will anything because it is everything. I think that's how I'm understanding. Let me know if I'm wrong. And the mind, again, he just confirms Tadamadanda's phrasing there, but I just don't know, like, still, do we have free will? But according to what he said, we don't, because everything's going according to God's will.
Summing up.
Yeah, it's something in the mind.
What is the practical outcome of all of this discussion? It's all very interesting. I guess we have not decided either way, this way or that way. But what is the practical outcome? A very beautiful conclusion is drawn by the philosopher Arindam Chakravarti at the end of his article. He says, there are these three stages. When you ask, do we have freedom of will? The first answer is when we look at our lives, yes. Second answer is when we look through philosophy, religion, science, neuroscience. Answer is no. No free will. And when we look beyond that to the enlightened person, the Jivan Mukta, yes, freedom. No free will, but freedom. So then we have stage one, straight away when it looks like on prima facie, there is free will. Upon investigation, scientific investigation, philosophical investigation, neuroscientific, religious teachings, no free will. And then when we come to freedom itself, enlightenment, we have freedom. At the level of Brahman, freedom. At the level of God also. Does God have free will or not? Yes, absolute, complete freedom. So what do we do? Conclusion is this. He says, right now practically we have the feeling of free will. There's no doubt about that. Quite apart from all these discussions. Our society is built on the idea that we have free will. And we feel that we have free will. And yet we know after all this that ultimately there is no free will. It's all God's will. So let's combine the two. And right now, use this appearance of free will. Use the fact that we feel free will so that we convert all our actions, these are his words, convert all our actions into prayer, into surrender to God. So we will do all our actions, day-to-day actions, whatever which we are doing in our personal life, family life, business life, and mentally surrender everything to God. Oh Lord, I feel you have planted in me this feeling of free will. I am exercising it, and yet I know ultimately everything is done by thy will. So every action should be, he uses the Sanskrit word namaha. Namaha means salutation. But he says, a deeper meaning of nama is na mama, not mine. Nama, salutation. Na mama, not mine. So I continuously surrender everything. Every thought, every word that I speak, every action that I do, mentally my attitude is, I am offering this to the Lord who alone has freedom. So that I will go from appearance of free will to an understanding that there is no free will to the freedom beyond will. So this is the conclusion which I liked very much. I think this is very much in tune with spiritual life. That's it then. We will have a discussion about this question answers a little later. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Shri Ram Krishna Arpanamastu. This is what is meant by surrendering every action. Sri Ram Krishna Arpanamastu. We do some action, speak, listen, understand, engage, and then ultimately surrender it to God. Thank you.
Okay, so interesting. So the illusion of free will, everything's deterministic, but yet you can get freedom once you get to enlightenment, because you're no longer bound by the world. And not freedom, not free will, but just freedom. So how I interpreted that was what I said earlier about how, because Brahman is everything and it's not limited by anything, it doesn't need freedom to do something because it already has that. So there's not a need for free will to do something because it's already it. That's how I'm understanding. Let me know if I'm wrong. Also, I want to go back to the cow rope story that he said, and now with that understanding, perhaps that, I don't know. Well, it's actually still the same thing. I was going to say that we are the cow, and the rope is the limitation of our free will, or should I say, it's the rope is something that says that we do not have free will. It's just that we can't see the rope. So we're walking around this tree that we're tied to, because if we genuinely had free will, we could go anywhere we want. But because we're tied to the tree, we do not have free will, but we do not know about the rope. So the free will is an illusion just because we don't realize the rope. So he does confirm what Swami Tadamananda has said, that although a bit differently, Tadamananda has said that Brahman has no free will, but because there's no free will, but he didn't say there's no free will needed. Perhaps maybe I don't know if he believes in that or not, but just Brahman has no free will, and Swami here says that it's freedom, not free will. And Tadamananda has said that we have free will, the body, the mind has free will, and he kind of confirms that by saying it's an illusion, but everything's deterministic. So kind of matching, a little bit contradictory. So I'm still not sure. It's still not sure. That's about all I can say. I guess they need to define that a little bit more as to why Swami, why things we do are deterministic, and everything we do is through God. All our actions is through God, so we don't have free will. Everything's deterministic. But yeah, that's just, yeah. It's getting too long. Alright, that's my reaction to Do We Have Free Will by Swami Sarvapriyananda. If you like my content, please consider subscribing. Thumbs up, thumbs down below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next vid.